We often read about Gideon, or we talk about Moses. But there were women of the Bible also that showed in great courage and great faith. We live in an age known as the Christian age. And we go open our Bible, though, we don't open our Bible to what is called the Christian age. We open it to the beginning of time, and it's the patriarchal age. And by that term, we learn that the oldest male member of a family, a clan, was the one in authority and who passed and made the major decisions. That age passed away with the coming of the law of Moses, and that was the Mosaical age. And the authority was in the law of God and the priest. And then came the Christian age that we live in now. But all three of these periods of time are connected together. All of them are interrelated. And the activities of one affects the activities of the next and then the following. And so when we open the Bible, we're looking from the perspective of the Christian mind. Back to an age when the Bible didn't mention Christ. It only gave brief glimpses of an age to come, in which he would be the Lord of Lords and King of Kings. And God worked this plan out historically, using human beings like us. They had faults. They made mistakes. They had to use their own cunning and craftiness. And oftentimes it was adverse to what God wanted, and sometimes God used it in spite of it, being the will of man. Tonight, we want to look at this woman called Rebekah. And as we look at her, we recognize something quite different back then. When one got ready to get married, it wasn't a procedure we have today. In this particular case, the bride and the groom did not even know one another until they were married. And they didn't make the choice to marry one another. It was made by those over them, particularly in this case by God. The time came after the birth of Isaac. You'll remember that Abraham was 100 years old and his wife, Sarah, was 90 when he was born. He was a favorite child. We all remember the story of Abraham and how he offered him in his heart to God. And how from that point forward, the story rolls forward to his marriage. Abraham did not want Isaac to marry a Canaanite woman, and the reason for that was because of the religion of the Canaanites. They worshipped idols. He wanted one to be selected from the kin, his kin, that he had not seen in 65 years. But he still believed that his faith in God and their faith in God was still close together and was a far distance away from the irreligious and heathen attitude of the people in the land of Canaan who worshiped idols. He wanted his son to be married within the clan of his father's family, Terah. And he wanted them to go back to Nahor, Abraham's brother's descendants. Nahor was not alive at the time this took place. So he had to make a decision. You know, when families plan marriages, it's a big event. But just imagine selecting a wife for your son. And he didn't even know who she's going to be. She doesn't know who he's going to be. So he couldn't go himself back home. So in this particular instance, he sent Eliezer, his head steward, and he said, Eliezer, come here and put your hand under my thigh. And evidently that was a custom of the day and time. Made it a very solemn vow. And he made him promise that he would make this journey and bring a wife or bride home to his son. So Eliezer, and just imagine that you are that person and you've got to go on this mission. You don't know where you're going, you don't know what's going to happen, but you know that God will work it out. So evidently Eliezer was a man of faith. And Abraham had evidently lived such a life before him that he too believed in God. So he took his journey. Now let's think about it. You're going to make a journey. Now Barry over here, when he gets ready to go on a trip, he turns it all over to his wife and says, you plan it and get everything ready, we'll go. She's grinning because that might be a little bit exaggerated. But Abraham turned it over to Eliezer. And it took 10 camels. That's like going on a trip that take 10 automobiles. Why did he need 10 camels? Well, he's going to make a journey of several hundred miles. He's going to have to carry provisions for himself and the men that went with him. The camels not only were the means of transportation, but for the carrying of the gifts that would have to be exchanged with the bride's family. So he had to carry himself and a crew of men to take care of the camels and help on the journey. So it just wasn't, well, I'm going on a little trip, I'll get in the car, I'll speed over there by myself, spend the night and come home. This took a very long period of time. He took his servants, he took jewels, he took gold, he took garments. And it went over into what we in the Old Testament call Mesopotamia. And when I studied history in college, it was Mesopotamia. But then it was also called Ur of the Chaldees. He went there to bring a wife back for his son. That is, for his master's son. And just imagine in your own mind that you're making this trip. There were no motels. There weren't any roadside tables for picnics or food. It was through an arid area part of the time, so there was very little water. So all of these things had to be worked out. And so Abraham put it in the hands of a responsible servant. And any person who runs a business knows that the more responsible the workers are, the more ease it is upon the owner. And God expects those people to accept the responsibility and carry it out. Well, it's sort of a type of, and of course you can read all of this in the Bible in the Genesis around the 22nd chapter. Eliezer's now going on a journey. It's almost like Abraham, a little bit like Abraham, when God said, Abraham, I want you to go somewhere. I'm going to send you on a journey. But I'm not going to tell you where. I'm going to send you to a land that I'll show you. Well, he went there. And now he's going to tell Eliezer, I want you to go back to the place where I was born. I don't want my son to go back there. I want him to stay here. Why didn't he send his son? His son was almost 40 years old. That's the age when he got married. 40 years old. Why didn't he send his son? Well, he said, I don't want my son to live there. God's promised me this land and my children, our son's children and grandchildren this land, and I want them to be here to receive it. So he sent Eliezer. And Eliezer didn't even know where he was going particularly. I mean, the people in the area. When he got there, he's going to say, where do Seigenthaler live? I'm a servant of a man who lived here 65 years ago. He's a man of wealth and circumstance today, a very wealthy man. But he took his journey. And in his mind, he anticipated problems that would arise. So he said, when I get there, and he got to a well, and as he approached the well, he didn't open his mouth, but in his heart he prayed, Lord, may a young lady come down to this well, and may she offer me water and my camels water, and may she be the one that will be I've come here for. You know, this sounds like it's well in left field. It just came into his mind. Lord, deliver the one I'm looking for, and I don't know who she is. But when he got there, he no more than got there, and a young lady, she never married. She had to be, I don't know what age. Certainly she was not the age of the man she would marry. He was already near 40 at the time. She came down to the well and she saw this stranger with this large entourage of camels and servants. And he called her over and said, will you give me some of your water? She had filled up a water jug. Young ladies often went down to the well and brought the water back home. And she had a water jug probably on her head. And she had filled it. And probably was ready to make her journey home. And his servant said, can I have some water? She said, oh, sure. I'm not going to give you some water, but I will water your camels. I'm going to tell you something. How much water would you have to take out of that well to water 10 camels? That's a job. There was a water trough there, so she gave him a drink, and then she poured the remaining water in the trough, and she began to dip until all those animals who had come a long way filled themselves with water. And he said, would there be a place for me to stay overnight at your house? I just imagine someone comes to your door and says, well, I've made a long journey, don't know where I'm going, trying to find somebody. Can I spend the night with you? Well, I can tell you that some people will let you spend the night. In 1954, I came to the state of Alabama to sell Bibles for the Southwestern Publishing Company during that summer to get enough money to go back and finish my senior year at college. And the very first thing I had to do was find somebody to let me stay with them for the summer months. And on occasions during the month, sometimes I would be overnight in the community and couldn't get back to where I'm supposed to be. I'd have to ask the person, can I spend the night? Wouldn't dare do it today, but I did back then. And she said yes. She watered the camel. The servants took a gold earring and 2 golden bracelets to reward her, and he gave them to her. Now that probably eased her a little bit, because it meant that he was conscientious and he could be relied upon. And the story really begins to thicken right here. She starts back toward the house, carrying her water jug, or maybe it turned over to one of his servants to carry it, we don't know, but they went back to the house with the water. And her brother came out, Laban, and he saw the golden bracelets, and he saw the ring in her nose. The Bible specifically says that. He saw the 10 camels, which indicated wealth. He also looked over probably the baggage and saw sufficient things there that indicated these people had come a long way and they came prepared. And then when he saw that, he went to this man, and these are the words Laban said, "Come in, O blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside, for I have prepared the house and a place for the camels?" When I read this, I become a little suspicious. It makes me think, well, maybe he saw this wealth and he thought, well, this is a stranger man. Maybe I get some of his wealth. The Bible doesn't tell me that, though. That's just an assumption on my part. It may be that it's just a good-natured hospitality offer. And then the servant said, no. He says, first, let's come in and let's eat. He says, no, I'm not going to eat until you know why I'm here. When someone knocks on your door and tries to sell you something, he doesn't quickly tell you right off the hand what he wants. He builds up to it. But this servant had come a very, very long way, and he was weary and he was tired. His mission wasn't completed. He probably was of substantial age in Abraham's servants. And so he said, now I want you to know that I came and I'm looking for a wife for the person, Abraham's son. And he sent me back over here where he's from. And when the word Abraham was said, then things begin to lock into place. For Abraham was well known. Even though he'd been gone for a number of years, he was still well known. He was a man of great wealth. He had over 400 servants at this time that had been born in his house. He had concubines. The Bible indicates that he had several children. Some like to think that he married after Sarah died and then had all those children. But if you read carefully the scriptures, you'll find out probably that he had to have these concubines there and children by them, so that when it came time for his son to reach the responsible age of being the next patriarch, he sent all the other children away with their inheritances. So this servant says, I'm here and I'm looking for a wife. I've come from Abraham. And I prayed a prayer before I got here. I said, Lord, if a young girl comes down to water and she offers me water and my camel's water, may she be the one. And immediately they understand this. And Laban and the rest of it says in Genesis 24, the thing comes from the Lord. We cannot speak to you either bad or good. Here is Rebekah before you, take her and go, and let her be your master's son's wife, as the Lord has spoken. Now let's just imagine that that happened at your house. Someone came in and said, well, the Lord sent me to take your daughter back to my master's son for a wife. You said, well, that's fine, take her. There's more than that involved in it. And so they called her and said, will you go? Will you go with this man, Rebekah? And she said, I will go. Now that took faith. She had no idea what was ahead in her life. And every young woman who marries a young man, neither of them ever knows what is ahead in their lives. And God has to guide us as them. They didn't want to go just at first with her. Laban said, well, let's say you stay 10 days and then you can go. He said, no. It's been a long journey. I've got to go now. Ask her. She said, I will go. So the next day they got out. They started home. So they sent away Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And where those 10 camels come in, they're going to take this young lady and her nurse and her maids back. They've unloaded a lot of the gifts and given them to her parents, relatives, as gifts. And now they're on their homeward journey. Before they go, they say something very, very strange. Our sister, may you become the mother of thousands of 10,000s, and may your descendants possess the gates of those who hate them. And that certainly has been fulfilled in posterity. For the problems that we have over in the Middle East and have had for centuries go back to this marriage. Now, so what have we learned so far? First, Rebekah is a young lady, but she's responsible. She makes decisions and sticks with them. She's not wishy-washy. She was a person of religious belief. Her belief was based in the words of the servant, his riches, and her faith in God. She came from a wealthy family that respected wealth. And even though they had not seen Abraham in over 65 years, they're happy to honor his request for a wife from among his kids. See, they saw that was the best possible situation that she would probably ever receive. And they fulfilled it. I always enjoy, as I read the book of Genesis 24. They're on their journey, and she's on a camel. She doesn't have her veil on when she's riding the camel because there are no strangers around. But as they get nearer home, nearer where Isaac lived, she saw off in the distance someone coming. And she said to the servant, who is this man walking in the field to meet us? And the servant said, it's my master. Listen, she took a veil, covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. how he had prayed a silent prayer, how it was fulfilled, how it was reiterated and told to the family, how she made the choice, and now she's here. The Bible says he took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Married now at 40 years old. And it's going to be 20 more years before they have children, before they have a child. Now Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife because she was barren after 20 years. And the Lord granted his plea, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. But problems arise. Births are not always straight without a difficulty. Sometimes there are problems. And in this problem, there were twins born. Fraternal twins. It wasn't one cell that split into two. It was two complete cells, two different cells. And when one came out, he was red and hairy. And the other was just the opposite. Esau came out first. Jacob grabbed his heel and was named Jacob, which means the planter. And even at birth, there was a real problem that just preceded and forecast the greater problem that will come later. And the Lord said to her, because she was troubled, no one can appreciate the birth of a child more than a mother, who has to go through the physical anguish and sometimes terrible pain of a birth. And she had problems. She didn't understand what was going on. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, looking down in time. One people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall turn the younger. And that has been fulfilled. Paul, in Romans the 9th chapter, talking about this very situation. For the children not yet being born, not having done any good or evil, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, not of works but of He who calls, who said to her, the older shall serve the younger. It's written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. Now we see the underlying work of God. Looking down through human eyes, saying this is what's going to happen in the future. And it's my plan. It's how I will work out the promise made to Abraham. In Genesis 26, of course, Isaac and Rebekah were nomads like Abraham, living in tents and traveling from one place to another, caring for sheep, growing wealthy. And so Isaac dwelt in Gerar. And the men of the place asked about his wife, and he said, she is my sister. Abraham had already said this before himself with Sarah, to keep from the men killing him and taking Sarah. And this also is what Isaac is doing. She's my sister, for he was afraid to say she's my wife, because he thought, lest the men of the place kill me for Rebekah, because she's beautiful to behold. They go on, and after the birth of the children grow up. Isaac now is getting older. It's time for him to leave this world. He's going to have to leave blessings, a birthright and blessings to the oldest son. And one day, and his vision had grown dull, so he didn't see very well at all. In fact, most of the time he had to feel to know things that he otherwise could have seen had his eyesight not left him. And one day Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to Esau, his son. And Esau went to the field to hunt game and to bring it in, so Rebekah spoke to Jacob, her son, saying, see, he had said, son, I need to give you your blessing. You go get me that favorite meal I like from you, the game that you make, and cook that stew, and bring it to me so I can bless you and then die. But wait just a minute. That's the father. And the mother is hearing all of this, and she's thinking, wait a minute, something's wrong here. That's not the way I heard it. God told me that the son I have chosen, of course, you know, they were partial. One liked one son better than the other. Esau liked Isaac, and Isaac liked Esau, and the other way around. Jacob and his mother were close, and she had remembered what she had been told. The older one shall serve the younger one. And now it looks like that's not going to be what's going to happen. And her mind goes to work. She's not waiting for God to work it out. She's going to get in there and help get it started. So his son went out to get game, to come back and make him the porridge or the soup or whatever it was. And she went to her son that she loved. And this is what she confided in him. Indeed, I heard your father speak to Esau, your brother, saying, bring me game and make several food for me that I may eat and bless you in the presence of the Lord before my death. And we know from reading the Bible that he didn't like it. Her son didn't like that idea. Well, Mama, Daddy can't see, but he knows my voice. And my brother is hairy, and if he feels around his neck and on his arms, he'll feel the hair, and I'm smooth. And my voice is thin, and his voice is low and gruffy. And so they have a problem. But she said to her son these words, and being the son who had loved and trusted his mother all those years, they had a special bond between them. And it's very wonderful when children can enjoy such a bond with their parents. You know, there's some parents whose children grow up and they don't enjoy it, don't have that bond. They don't feel that relationship. They don't understand. But she had it. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to what I command you. Go down to the flock, bring me from there 2 choice kids of the goats, and I will make savory food from them for your father, such as he loves. And you shall take it to your father, that he may eat it, and that he may bless you before his death. And then this is where the son says, well, wait, Mama. It won't work. I'm not hairy. I don't smell like the field and like the game. My voice is higher. And my father may curse me and put a curse upon me because I tried to deceive him if he finds out what we're doing. And the mother says, forget about it. Let the curse be on me. You obey my voice. So they went through that plan. She covered his hands with animal fur and around his neck and his face, so that when he came into his Father with that meal, the flavor of which reached his nostrils and made him feel good, and he would reach out and he could feel around the face and around the neck and on the hands, and he could say, well, it is you, but it sounds like my other son. The voice seems to be that of Jacob. In a lesson like this, we need to recognize that God is working out his plan. And that really God has a plan for all of us. And sometimes we try to step in and work it out for God, as they did. God's will be done even when man seems to be doing it his way rather than God's way. God uses sinful people because that's all that he has. We have to remember that Christ has cleansed and sanctified us by the washing of the water by the Word. So as I come to the end of this lesson, and it's a generally different kind of lesson where it talks about a woman and how she grew up married to a man she had never seen until she married him. The relationship grew close, and she was a very important part of God's plan of redemption. She filled her shoes well. And if it were not for women who fill their shoes well, we wonder what this world would be like. Her life was not easy, but it was full. And so we should appreciate our mothers for what they have to sacrifice and what they go through to have a family. And we should appreciate our Christian mothers because they're doing it under obedience to God. And they're forming that special relationship where children can trust in them and listen to them and follow them. And so as I come to the end of the lesson, let's look back over our lives. We have to accept many things by faith. We don't know what the end result is going to be. We have God's Word, what it will be, so we must accept that and follow Him. Have I obeyed the gospel, and am I ready to serve God, whatever age it may be? If I'm a woman, am I like Rebekah? If I'm a man, am I like Isaac or Jacob? Listening and following the Lord. Even though we don't know the future, God will care for us. And that's the lesson we need to learn. If you're subject to the invitation, will you come as we now stand and sing?
Have thine own way.